Hello and welcome to Strategic Compass. Today I'm joined by Nelson Wang. I think you've seen him on our program, presumably twice, on China-related affairs. He's one of the leading political analysts in China, based in Shanghai. He's with us again. Thank you very much, Nelson, for joining us.
Thank you, Professor Unal, for inviting me again.
It's our pleasure. Yeah, it's our pleasure. Well, let's get going immediately because there's quite a bit of things, we would like to talk about. The latest round of China-America trade war in particular. Now, this latest round was sparked off by, again, Trump's, sudden action to impose heavy tariffs on Chinese goods, and then the Chinese government, for quite understandable reasons, imposed export controls on rare earth minerals. Now, can you explain to us what it is first, and then we'll go into the political dimensions of all that?
Well, thank you. Well, I think it's quite clear that all of these tariff wars are being started by the U.S. and Donald Trump is quite, at his ease to start a war against anyone, and this time on China again. So people have been, taken by surprise how quickly China has reacted. I think you have to look back into the first trade or tariff war Trump launched against China in April. Mm-hmm. China has always been very swift in retaliation. Now, what does that suggest? And this is something I think it's important that our friends and the audience can understand, that it took China the last 10 years to prepare for this day. China is a country that doesn't do things out of its mind overnight. China believes in long-term planning. So for the past 10, even 20 years, China did foresee what is happening, what is going to happen, what is coming our way. So I believe all of these swift retaliation or counteraction that Chinese government has taken, it actually shows that China is well prepared.
It certainly does, yes.
So this time you have pointed out correctly that China has exercised very strict control on the export of rare earth. And because Chinese government believes, and it has been confirmed actually, that this is a critical material that is used almost in every important and sensitive industries. Not only in the weaponry manufacturing, but also in space exploration equipments, and also even in chips as well. Mm-hmm. It applies to so many areas that the U.S. is feeling the pain now. Because the reason for China to take all of this counter reactions is basically to tell the counterpart, we are not vulnerable as you might think, because a trade war has no winner. It's not that China is going to exercise control on export of rare earths, that China is benefiting. No. But this is going to hit the U.S. quite severely.
And so also the entire West, I think.
Sorry?
And also the entire West, the collective West, is going to be hit by this.
Yeah, I mean, because it's the rare earth is used in so many areas that it's definitely going to hit all of the countries that needs rare earth, and including European countries as well. Yes. So this is a signal that I think China, or a clear message that China is sending out to all of its trading partners who, still believe that they can manipulate the way trade is being conducted. So I think it's time that people wake up, that China is no longer the country that can be manipulated and, to whatever other people like, because China wants to have fair trade. But then when you exercise this kind of bluffing and launching a trade war, this is, really destroying the global supply chain tremendously. And China has the weapons to basically defend itself.
Well, should we also talk about the long-term planning? Because China has made all its planning. So China's dazzling economic rise, China's rise in every other field, has also to do with Chinese planning system. So yes. Can you give us the systemic Chinese planning, and also how did China make its preparations for this day over the last decade or so?
Okay, thank you, Professor. Well, as you know, that I'm not an expert in high-tech technologies, and about rare earth, actually, something to share with you. I have made some research, and I've consulted people about rare earth, because to me, rare earth is also something quite alien, actually. So what I have found out, much to my surprise, is actually Chinese scientists have identified the value of rare earth even in the 50s. So the planning on exploring and processing rare earth actually started not just now or 10 years ago. It started in the 50s. So, of course, we don't have to go back that, long. If we look at the last 40 years, because Chinese economy just risen up out of the blue over a period of 40 years to what it is now today, the second largest economy. So people from different parts of the world have been trying to decipher the mystery of the Chinese economic rise. So I have also read many comments. Different people have different comments from different angles of why China has made such a remarkable economic achievements. But based on my understanding, and this is something I would like to share with everyone, I reserve the right to be wrong, of course, but I think something to remember. There are several major elements and factors that have made China what it is today. It is, in my summary, political centralization coupled with economic decentralization, with a long-term vision, together with a short-term goal of 5-year plans. So there are 4 elements here. Number 1 is political centralization. You all know that the political system in China, the Communist Party is the predominant party that governs the whole country. So politically, it is quite stable. And for anybody that wants to climb up the ladder in governance, there is only one way up. In other words, the execution of state decisions is also very efficient. It is one party. So it's vertical. This is what I call it, political centralization. It's all the decisions are made at the top. And then economic decentralization. What does that mean? Because who are the heroes that made such economic achievements, so great economic achievements? It's not those big companies or the private giants. No, it's actually the local mayors, the county mayors, because they have been totally incentivized to develop the local economy. Because only by achieving that objective, they can climb up the ladder in career, in their political career. So this mobilization is something that, is often neglected. People don't regard these people as heroes. These are the local mayors. I would say these local mayors, the local officials, they are the real heroes over the last 40 years of the country's economic development, because they were the people who did the master planning of the city, of the region. So it's a vertical line. It's the county, then city, and then the regional city, and then the province, and all the way up to the top, the country. So it is political centralization together with economic decentralization. They have been given a free hand.
Okay.
Now, that's only two, all right? Political centralization, economic decentralization, but also the country has a clear goal, a long-term vision. For a country, particularly for a big country like China, you cannot develop at random. So you need to have a vision, a long-term vision. Where do you want the country to be 20 years later, 50 years later? But only with one long-term vision is not enough, because people will say this is empty, empty promises. But coupled with a short-term objective in the form of 5-year plans. China is perhaps one of the very few countries who are still adopting this 5-year plan. We didn't invent this. We inherited this from the Soviet Union.
Well, we used to have it in Atatürk's time, and we continued with that until the Americans basically messed up with our politicians, saying that it is totally unnecessary and it's socialistic. Otherwise, we had it until recently.
Wonderful, yes. So if you look at the 5-year plans, the implementation of the 5-year plans, let's say 40 years, 80% of every 5-year plan have been achieved. And that's a remarkable, achievement. That's a remarkable achievement. So things never happened just before yesterday. No. Everything we're seeing today has been planned out way back when. So this is, China has the benefit of having a stable government. And this is quite different from all those liberal democracies, because they keep changing their government and they keep having different, party objectives. So that's the difference. We're not here to debate who is better. But if we're looking at the achievement of China, I think these are the credits I think we have to give.
Okay. Excellent. Well, this actually explains how China basically has achieved such a great economic development. Incredible, and it does actually explain what it is. Now let's come to the latest preparations that China made for such a standoff with the United States in every sense. financially, economically, trade war, or whatever. I keep watching some of the Chinese commentators, including you, saying that China is prepared for any confrontation with the United States, though it wants a peaceful and sustainable economic relationship with the United States and with the rest of the world. Now, where did all these preparations particularly start? Bringing the volume of the American treasury bonds and the dollars down in the Chinese stocks of reserves and all that, and the rest of it. Give us your take on that.
Well, I want to put it this way. My observation is that China is or has been the beneficiary of the so-called globalization. And this is a fact that we have to admit. China's economic rise really started drastically ever since the country was admitted into the WTO. So that was at the turn of the century. So basically, China is not against the ongoing system. China is the beneficiary of all that. But in the meantime, I think since the days when Obama was in power, when the Obama administration started this shift to the Asia Pacific, and later on they call it Indo-Pacific, the resolve of the US government to contain China's development became evident. And that was a strategic decision of the US, which China is fully aware of. And if you ask, when did China started the preparation? I think it is an ongoing process. And it changes actually along with the development of global politics, geopolitics. So I think after the pandemic, things have changed very dramatically. And China has felt that the days the US government is going to tighten up the rope is becoming real. So China is not going to sit here and do nothing. So that's why all the active preparations were being made, I think particularly after the pandemic. So even though on a diplomatic level, I think China is still doing its best to try to avoid an open confrontation with the US. But we know that the days are coming, and it's irreversible. And China has given up any unrealistic expectations that the US is going to reach a rapprochement with China, that we're going to coexist. They don't want to coexist. So it is not something pretty, but it is a reality, even though we still are trying very hard as a country to reach a peace agreement with everyone. Because after all, China is a nation of traders. We just want to do business with people. We do not want to dominate the world. We do not want to, be the hegemon or the next hegemon. But the problem here is that our counterpart, the US and some of the Western countries, they do not believe that. And you can't change
because it's never been part of their culture.
Exactly.
Their culture has been based on devastation and pillage and dominance and hegemony and
Absolutely.
what have you. They don't understand anything else.
Exactly. It is always, you are either with me or against me. And my wing, my gain has to be at the cost of your loss. So I said, no, this is wrong. This is wrong. And that's why there is this civilizational misunderstanding, if it's not a conflict.
Well, it is civilization misunderstanding. Yes, it is civilizational. There is no question about that. But and also, yes, things basically took a sharp turn for the worse after the COVID pandemic. But I think, do you agree with me, or would you agree with me that the Western sanctions upon Russia following the Russian takeover Crimea also must have sent to certain signals to China in terms of reserves? For instance, if you keep the American treasury bonds and American dollars and other things, then that might be create certain problems, as it did for Russia, for instance.
Absolutely. I think the misuse of sanctions or the unilateral measures.
By the way, I call the United States, USA, Unilateral Sanctions Associates.
Oh, very interesting. Yes.
It's all unilateral sanctions all the time.
Absolutely. No, this is purely because they believe that they control the world, and I also, this is exactly why most of the global institutions that have been set up after the Second World War, they are not functioning anymore. Why? Because during the inception of those institutions, it was taken for granted that the US is going to dominate the whole world. So that is actually why things are not functioning. And the misuse of sanctions does send a clear signal to a lot of people, including China. So, of course, China is aware of what the US is capable of. So if you look back, China started to reduce its holding of US Treasury bonds, but gradually, not drastically. China increased dramatically its holding of US Treasury bonds following the financial crisis in 2008 and 9. The US came to China asking for help. But you were right in pointing out that when the US started its unilateral sanctions against Russia, that was a very big signal. And if I may add, following the crisis in Ukraine, when the outbreak of the war in Ukraine in 2022, I think that has accelerated China's preparation. Because the measures against Russia by the US and the Western countries have been all the more clear that they might take drastic actions, regardless of whatever rules or the rules-based order, as they call it. So there are no rules at all, because their rules are the rules. Other people's rules are not the rules. So, and I think the world today, after all these years, I think the world is totally different now. We're now talking about a multipolarity already. And I sometimes want to draw people's attention. I said, when the war in Ukraine first started, for like at least a year or two, the term rules-based order was everywhere in the media. However, ever since last year, since 2024. We don't hear that anymore.
No.
We don't hear that anymore. And that's very interesting. I said, haha, how come all of a sudden that term is being dropped by people from the West even? So I think it is time to bring back to reality.
Yeah.
Bring back to reality.
And I think they have had to drop one other thing. You see, whenever they used to talk about rules-based order, they used to also talk about moral high ground.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that has also been basically dropped.
Gone.
It's gone with Israel committing a clear-cut genocide in Gaza. And the Western world in general being the complicit, in that daily broadcast genocide, if you like.
Yeah. So I think this
they
double
have had to drop
standard and
it.
the hypocrisy is too obvious now.
Yeah. Now, let's come to another point, which is, I think, quite important. For instance, we talk about the West, okay, but at the same time, in their approach to Russia and to the war in Ukraine, there appears to be certain cracks in the collective West. It seems as if Trump could just make a deal with Russia over this and the other, and then bring an end to the war in Ukraine. But the liberal governments in Europe, in particular in Germany, France, and Britain, they are adamant to the last Ukrainian, basically, to carry on with the war. And they are doing all sorts of things, including taking dangerous steps, particularly lately, like giving to Ukraine the frozen Russian assets for compensation and all that. Now, do you see any changes in attitude towards China of these Western countries, or are they just united in their approach to China as one?
Well, I think the European countries, it's not a monolith at all, even though, as you mentioned, the leading countries in Europe, Britain, France, and Germany, and perhaps a few others, are extremely firm in their support of Ukraine, or to keep bleeding Russia. They basically wanted to, keep bleeding Russia.
Yeah.
Everyone knows that Russia can never be defeated as a country. So that's why they're trying to prolong the war to bleed Russia out. Because, it is one country, no matter how you look at it. Russia is fighting the war alone. And so in terms of accusing China, the European countries have accused China constantly over the past, I think, 2 or 3 years, have been accusing China for supporting Russia. But that is a false claim, because China's position is quite clear that we're not a party to the conflict. And how can you stop us from doing business with Russia? We're also doing business with Ukraine as well, right? But we're not supplying, China is not supplying any weapons or lethal weapons to Russia. But you can't stop me from doing business with Russia. We're buying Russian oil and gas, but in the meantime, we're selling whatever Russia needs for non-military purposes. So that constant bashing on China, I think they are now tired already in the West, because there is no proof of whatsoever. But China, I think the Chinese government is also quite eager to maintain a stable trade relations with Europe. And that's something that we have to admit, because not only China needs Europe as a market, but also European countries also need China. So this economic decoupling between China and Europe is senseless, completely senseless, right? So, but things are not, it's on and off, on and off. If what China believes is that if European countries, if Europe as a whole is really going to be independent in their foreign policies, in their economic decisions, then there is no point for Europe not to do business with China. But
and there is every point to do business with China. Yeah. There is every point to do business with China.
Right.
Yeah,
you are right.
So, and also for US companies, I think the NVIDIA CEO was saying, now we have lost the giant Chinese market. So
absolutely.
Was this something we actually hoped for or aimed for or wished for?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this, all of this, economic war, the tariff war, personally, I believe they will all cool down by the end of the day, because it does not make sense for anyone. Of course, China is going to suffer. Yes, the export dependence on the US by China has been reduced substantially. Mm-hmm. In April, it was something like 15%. But now it is already below 10%. And I think the latest figure shows that it is something like 8% already, which means China's export to the US comprises only 8% of China's total export. And that shows that even if there is a complete economic decoupling, it's not going to be the end of the day for China. If there are no sales, no trade between China and the US, it's not going to be the end of the day for China. But that's not the ideal situation. This is not what China wants. And it does no good, not only to China, but to the US. So the same thing applies to Europe as well. I mean, it is not that China wants to be a world hegemon, is going to exercise economic coercion to make you bend down for, things that you don't want to do. So this is why I believe all of this fiasco, these dramas will end soon, because people will have to be brought back to reason.
And strategically speaking, how do you see the US attempts to basically try to bring about some sort of an alliance in Asia Pacific to contain China? Is the US decoupling on all those efforts, or is it actually making more efforts to create some sort of an alliance with which to contain China in that part of the world? And also China's outlet to West Asia, to Europe, through Russia, Ukraine, and also through Iran, Turkey, and all that. The incidents and events in all these areas, are they concerning to China in one way or the other, or they are not maybe just orchestrated efforts by the United States? They are just happening.
No, I think the containment of China's development is a state policy by the US, and that's a given, right? Mm-hmm. Particularly under the previous administrations, whereby the neocons were basically the driving force behind. Although Trump has shown something different, Trump is more about protecting its own territory. It's to make America great again. And it's perhaps we are seeing some signs of a strategic retreat. You know, Trump doesn't want to be the global, the world policeman anymore, which is actually good news for everyone. It's good for everyone, and maybe
particularly for people like us in this part of the world to get the US out of the region. You know,
I know. Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
However fast it could be.
Yes. So you mentioned about Asia Pacific. Yes, you know, there are long-term allies of the US, including like Japan, Korea, the Philippines, and some other countries. Yes, these countries have been under a lot of pressure from the US strategically to try and contain China's development. And I believe if the US really wants something to happen, and they will follow. They will follow. But bear in mind, ASEAN, the Southeast Asian Nation Association, that group of countries, the 10 countries, they are the next economic powerhouse. This is quite a unique organization of countries, actually, and they are the biggest trading partner of China. And if you want these 10 countries to decouple from China, that's unthinkable. It is unthinkable. And also, we have to look very carefully about the movement of countries like Korea and Japan. Because China, Korea, and Japan were on the verge of signing a trilateral agreement to create the biggest ever free trade zone. Of course, Obama jumped in and stopped it and destroyed the whole thing. But the trilateral secretariat is still there. These three countries are still talking because culturally we're quite similar. We're quite similar. And all these three countries, including China, it's the North Asia. It's the North Asia region. And if these three countries come together, it'll be the biggest economic bloc, basically. Because these three countries are usually ranked top 10.
Exactly.
So, of course, the US didn't want this to happen. And so Obama destroyed it. But it doesn't mean that we're not talking to each other anymore. So China is also now a member of RCEP. And RCEP is the biggest trade bloc. If you want to look at trade bloc, this is the largest trade organization. So China is part of this, part of that. Why is that? Because China is now the biggest trading partner of over 150 countries. And this is a fact that you cannot deny. So if you want a country or a group of countries to decouple from China, it is perhaps too late already. It is too late. Any effort like this is too late. And the reason, there is also another reason why all of these countries have become big trading partners or the biggest trading partner with China is because they are not afraid of China. Because China is not going to be the next United States of America. And China doesn't have a history of colonization. And most importantly, China does not interfere into other countries' domestic affairs. I think this is the most important thing, that people are not against China.
Well, excellent. And I think we can conclude with these wonderful remarks. Thank you very much, Nelson.
Thank
you. Do you want to add anything?
No, I'm looking forward to coming to your great country, Turkey, one day. I only stopped over in Istanbul, in Ankara, in Antalya, stopover only, but never had a chance to visit your great country. I know Turkey or Turkey. That's the correct pronunciation now, right? Turkey is, one of the most important countries in the world today, and your culture is also quite unique. Actually, the diplomacy is something that to be envied of. Your country's diplomacy, it is quite different from a lot of countries. Actually, you
Thank
are
you very
here,
much.
you are there, you are everywhere, and
A
this
bit,
is something to be looked upon as well.
well, yes. On that actually equation, there is much to talk about with regard to Turkey's foreign policy orientations, if you like, lately.
Absolutely.
It's a subject which comes up for discussion every now
Yeah.
and again. And lately, as the junior partner of the government, made a suggestion that Turkey, he used the word alliance, but he meant closer relations with Russia and China. And I commented on it quite a bit. I'm
It's very interesting. Yeah.
I'm one of the leading, if you like, commentators on that.
Of course you
So,
are. Yes.
the debate and discussion is always there, and we should arrange something whenever you are basically you are going through Istanbul. We should arrange something. You should stay with us
Looking
for a
forward
few
to that.
days.
Looking
Excellent.
forward. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of our program today. We have hosted the leading specialist and political commentator, Nelson Wang of Shanghai, China. And we have spoken about China's rise, as well as basically China's relations with the West, China's relations with the other parts of the world. It has been a very fruitful discussion. Thank you very much once again, Nelson. And until the next program, bye-bye for now.
Thank you, Professor Unar. It's always been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.